Good afternoon. Welcome to our weekly BW Dialogue. Today we are talking to Sri K. Raju. He has multiple credits to his personality, to his professional achievements, to his contributions to the nation. But today we are talking to him as an author. But to set the context right and to introduce Sri K. Raju formally, he is the national coordinator for the All India Congress Party for the Dalit community. He's also been a minister in a state. He's also been a bureaucrat. So he understands governance, he understands politics, and now he understands what does make a community grow. Today, we are going to talk to you about a seminal book that Sri K. Raju has written on the Dalits. This is called The Dalit Truth, and it focuses on all aspects of the Dalit community. So really, first of all, our congratulations, happy Baisakhi to all of you. Happy Baisakhi, Sri K. Raju. In every Indian, home, there is a festival today, and it is because it is a festival for every Indian. Doesn't matter which state, which language, which culture. So it's a very auspicious day. We are doing this conversation on an auspicious day. I hope we are able to change through this conversation the understanding of what the Dalit truth is, as you talk about in your book. What does the Dalit community aspire to be, and how the leaders of this country can fulfill their aspirations. So look forward to the conversation, but I'd also like to welcome you to this BW Dialogue, Shri K. Raju. Welcome, and let me start by asking you, how have been your last 2 years personally and professionally? We are just coming out of COVID. And what motivated you to write this book? And why now?
Last 2 years has been very challenging. In fact, myself and every member of my family suffered COVID, and very close relatives of mine, friends, we lost in COVID. And I've been out in the field motivating my Congress leaders, workers across various states to go to the aid of COVID patients, families. It has been very hectic, but I could find some time during the same period to edit this book. The title of this book, The Dalit Truth, The Battles for Realizing Ambedkar's Vision. I think I should give a disclaimer. I'm not claiming that I'm the first one to bring out Dalit truth. I think hundreds and thousands of writers in the past have written about the stories of Dalits, their pain, their trials, tribulations, bringing out the Dalit truth. Anybody going and talking to the people in the villages, in the urban areas, can fathom the Dalit truth if they see very clearly their hearts, understand their pain. But this book title, The Dalit Truth, is primarily to show that Dalit truth is fighting the caste lies. And that is the battle that Dalits today are waging to fight against the lies of the caste system to realize Ambedkar's vision. So that's why I had put this title, The Dalit Truth. All the topics covered in this book bring out the interplay between the truth and the lies. While the Dalit truth bears the burden of the past with unflinching grace, the caste lies, they try to negate the past so that the dominant classes which have fabricated these lies can continue their hegemony. So ultimately, what is the Dalit truth? This book is primarily focusing. To put it in one sentence, Dalit truth is about the exclusion hiding behind the pretense of inclusion, despite the promise of social inclusion and equality promised in the Constitution. So this book looks at various walks of lives and try to bring out the interplay between the truth and the lies. And I would end by saying this book is a companion to the truth seeker who wish to demolish the architecture of lies that have fabricated the whole architecture of subjugation and discrimination against the Dalits.
Thank you, Mr. Raju, for writing this book. I'm sure it'll make people think. And this you also call it the rethinking India, the Dalit truth, the battles for realizing Ambedkar's vision. Why do you think we need to rethink India? Of course, you outlined that in the garb of inclusion, we still have Dalits who've not been able to come truly into the main fold and be integrated with the growth and progress that they so much deserve and need. So, why do you think we need to rethink India?
The Samrit Bharat Foundation, an organization which has brought out this series of books under the broad umbrella of Rethinking India, is looking at various aspects of the country's challenges across various sectors and trying to see whether there is a need for rethinking, whether there is a need for introspection. That's why the broad title of these series of books is Rethinking of India, and my book is the eighth in that series.
Okay. Now, let me also ask for you know, why this book and why now? Clearly, we're almost 75 years after the independence, and if we've not achieved what we'd set out through our constitution and through Ambedkar's vision, clearly someone needs to write a book, and you're not the first one, you're not the last one. But why now? Why do you think a book like this is needed now, and it will bring about the change that you wish to?
I think, first of all, I must give a background to this book. What has inspired me to bring out this book? It was about 5 years back. Congress Party organized an international seminar to commemorate Baba Sahib Ambedkar's teachings and his legacy. Martin Luther King III, son of Martin Luther King Jr., who was one of the guest speakers at that seminar. We had a long discussion on various issues concerning Black lives, and he was trying to understand what is the vision of the Congress Party towards the Dalits. It was at that point of time I shared with him two speeches delivered by Sri Rahul Gandhi ji, one in 2015 at Mao, the birthplace of Baba Sahib Ambedkar, at a rally to commemorate 125th birth anniversary of Dr. Ambedkar. The second was in 2016 at Nagpur, very closer to Diksha Bhumi, at a rally to address an event which was a closure event of 125th birth anniversary of Baba Sahib Ambedkar. At both these rallies, the speech he made has given profound thought narrative to the Congress Party. In the 2015 speech, he talked as how every Congress leader and Congress worker will have to fight against the caste system. They have to battle for annihilation of caste. He has explained how caste is not just a social phenomenon, it is there in every structure, and how battling the caste is important to realize the equality in the society. Perhaps it was first time in a public forum a public leader gave such a clarion call to the people to annihilate the caste. In the second speech, in the second rally, that was 1 year later in 2016, he spoke at length about two ideologies before the country. One ideology rooted in the constitution, which secures equality to the people, which secures justice, fraternity, and other ideology which is opposite to that, which perpetuate the caste system. So he exhorted the Congress workers to fight against the ideology which is working against the constitutional values, the Manuwad ideology. So it was at that point of time it occurred to me that it's time for me to really look at from this perspective as to what has happened so far, on the constitutional promises to the Dalits and what needs to be done and how to combat the current trend of Dalits in some states moving away from the Congress party and moving away from the constitution, moving towards Hindutva Manwad ideology. So I wanted to really understand this whole spectrum, and then thought a book at this point of time would put the things in right perspective. And while doing it, I understood, unless I see it from the lens of the caste lies, I will not be able to explain the phenomenon clearly. That's how I brought out this truth and lies conversation.
Absolutely. I think the context has to be understood for what you're trying to bring out, what is the need. Now, let me ask you, once somebody read the book, they have a point of view, they understand what you're saying. But at the right upfront, let me ask you, is there a favorite chapters of yours in the book? All chapters are equal. For an author, they're like equally inspiring and equally important. But is there a favorite chapter that you have in the book?
Yeah, there is a chapter, Saffronization of Dalits by Meghavanshi. He brings out clearly how the saffronization of Dalits is happening. He explains this whole phenomenon from a very grassroots level perspective, which is a eye-opening, which every Dalit should know, so that they really understand the truth and falsities of this kind of a mobilization. That is one chapter. Another chapter is the developmental paradigm, redefining the developmental paradigm. Today, the biggest challenge for Dalits is to make the governments understand and develop that kind of a sensitivity to think that Dalits are lagging behind in various development parameters when compared to rest of the society. And governments have to really understand how to accelerate the development of Dalits in various sectors, so that in a given time frame they will be able to come closer to rest of the society. This kind of a perspective is needed at every state level, at every department level, at a central government level, so that at any point of time they are very clear as to what is the gap between the Dalits and rest of the society on various developmental parameters, and what needs to be done to accelerate the development, so that in a given time frame Dalits can come on par with the rest of the society. That kind of a thought process is needed in those who are formulating policies, programs, and legislations for the development of the country. They need to have that kind of a sensitive understanding of the development needs of Dalits, and come out with plans, programs, which will, in a given time frame, help Dalits to come on par with rest of society. Then only the equality will happen. Then only equal society can be seen.
Okay, now let me also dive into what, in your view, are the issues facing the Dalits. You outlined them very well in the book in details. Tell our audience what are some of the issues that still face Dalits 75 years after the freedom of this country.
I think first and foremost issue is livelihoods. Even today, Dalits are most of the poor or Dalits are Adivasis. Their access to assets which will give them incomes is very negligible. Most of them are agricultural laborers or workers in the unorganized sector. So their incomes are very low. They are facing serious problems to give education to their children. So, in my opinion, the state governments or the central government should take this responsibility of providing quality education to the Dalit children. Whatever is the background of the families, every Dalit child, if he or she is able to access quality education, that will help them to really move forward. There are a number of examples across the country as how where governments have given this kind of a focus to give quality education to Dalits. Dalit students were performing so well. They were standing second to none. They were in fact performing much better than many other students.
Oh, sorry, something. So coming back to now, again, the last 2 years were very tough for people, both in terms of lives and livelihoods. Yes. And thanks to the vaccination program, we have done okay. And you're talking of livelihoods of Dalits in a separate breath. Why do we need to talk about Dalits in a separate breath? Why are, you already explained that the inclusion hasn't happened. What are the reasons these inclusions haven't happened over successive governments? And for a large part, there was a Congress government which was in power, but still there is no inclusion that has happened. So give us a context of how would you judge the last 75 years in terms of not providing equal opportunities in livelihood and every other area. Of course, education is a passport to livelihood. That's that starting point. Second is building a level playing field, right? Which means in some cases prioritizing Dalits over others, right? Because if they need handholding. So give us historically why we have not done that. Without going, I'm not wanting to go into the politics of that, but I'm saying why. There was your party was in power for a long time, right? And it didn't happen. So I want you to tell us the reasons why it has been tough structurally for Dalits not to come up.
I think at the first place, the kind of subjugation, discrimination these communities were subjected to for ages, that has put them in such a disadvantageous situation to really access any fruits of the development. It takes time for them. Secondly, I think soon after independence, Congress in right earnestness tried to implement the land reforms. If these land reforms had been implemented effectively across all the states, if every Dalit was able to get access to land, things would have been different. But unfortunately, though land reforms were implemented, there were very serious implementation problems. There were judicial impediments that have come in the way of securing cultivable land for every Dalit family. Had we achieved that, today Dalits would have been in a different situation. But unfortunately, only a portion of the Dalit families were able to access the land through land reforms movement. The secondly, through various anti-poverty programs, some families got benefited, but some families could not really access these benefits. So I would say that the Congress governments have implemented land reforms, implemented anti-poverty programs, brought in labor legislations, brought in social security measures, and taken up development of SC localities, taken up housing programs, taken up civic communities. All that was done, but I would say the effort has not been proportion to the problems Dalit were facing. In the first instance, large chunk of Dalits remained assetless, so they continue to be landless laborers, and many of them moved to urban areas and ended up as unorganized workers, eking out their daily livelihoods. Secondly, through impetus given to the education, definitely substantial number of Dalit students got benefited, but still a lot needs to be done in terms of enhancing the quality of education, giving them skills, giving them employment opportunities. So what I would like to say is, lot has been done. Lot of Dalit communities have been benefited. A lot of them have really accessed the benefits of development, but still many families are still in need of developmental support.
Now let's move to solutions. We understand the issue, and you right up front have marked two areas. One, you talked about livelihoods. The other, you talked about the concern of saffronization. You said that's your most favorite chapter. Now let's focus a bit on the solutions. What are the solutions, and how do you prioritize what you're going to do? Give us some solutions that you've put forward in your book in terms of upliftment of Dalits so that you can build this new India that you're talking of. Redefined India, reimagined India.
I think the solution is a resolve on the part of the government to invest that portion of the budget, which is equivalent to the population proportion of the Dalits, towards the development of Dalits, whether it is 18% or 16%. Every state has to earmark that kind of a money and put this money on specific schemes that will accelerate the development of Dalits across various sectors. That is the first thing. The second thing is there has to be plans to secure access to employment for the Dalits, particularly the educated youth. They need to be given employable skills. They need to be given support to secure employment in the private sector, in the government sector. That trust is needed. Thirdly, even in the access to political power, I think Dalits should have their share of political power. And finally, Dalits should have their share in the GDP of the nation. So some of these broad agenda items need to be pushed. One, as I said, the budgets have to be specifically earmarked for development of Dalits so that there is overall development across various sectors. Secondly, there has to be focused approach to give quality education to Dalits from KG to PG. Thirdly, the skill development and employment in private sector, in the government sector. And fourthly, their reasonable share in the political power and their rightful share in the GDP has to be ensured.
At this point, let me bring in my senior colleague and a senior editorial professional, Mr. Rohel Amin, into the conversation. Rohel, you and Shri K. Raju.
Hi, can you,
am Raju, we would like you to switch on your video. Yes, and Rohel, I would request you to do the same.
Yes, once again, I have switched on the video. Can this be done on the text side, please?
Ratnesh and Salman, can we enable Mr. Rohel Amin's video? Rohel, go ahead, ask your question in audio context, and that's yes, Salman and Ratnesh and whoever is managing this BW dial on behalf of Businessworld will bring your video on.
Right. In the meanwhile, Mr. Raju, there's another aspect which I wanted to touch upon, which is about the politics of aspirations, which the Dalit community, of course, has now, there's a new pattern, the way they vote, the way it's no longer the vote bank that you can so-called manipulate. They have their own aspirations. Give me a sense of the evolution of this changing pattern of Dalit voting that we have seen over the years, and what are these aspirations that they are, looking for?
Yeah, I think the globalization and the economic development that the country has witnessed has created an aspirational class within the Dalit communities. So they were no longer prepared to take things as they are. They are trying to question, they are trying to demand, they are trying to aspire to better lives. So it is in that background, many Dalit families, many subcastes within the Dalit communities, they found that they were not developing like other communities. So they got enchanted. They were no longer remaining to be the vote block of the Congress party. They were looking at other options. So it is at that point of time the identity politics promoted by say Kanshiram has attracted them in UP. Similarly, in Maharashtra also, similar identity politics attracted Dalits. So that has resulted in gradual drifting away of Dalits away from the Congress party to some of these parties.
Okay,
And
I had to rejoin. My tech team tells me, so I'll just rejoin in a minute. I just please
Yeah, and I'll
continue.
ask. Mr. Raju, continue. I'm very much here. And while Rohel rejoins, you were explaining why the Dalit vote bank has shifted and how they are still a very important part of the political process of democracy, and you were building on it. Go on.
yeah. So, and of late, Dalits moving towards Hindutva also is happening. So, I wouldn't really find it is something not expected. This is what is bound to be there. The political parties are bound to see what are the fault lines in other parties, and they try to identify how to galvanize certain section support. That is what some political parties are doing. But it is for the Congress party to really understand and respond to the aspirations of Dalits, and then try to expand the space for the Dalits within the party, and also espouse the cause by promoting policies which will accelerate their development, address their concerns, and also fight for their human rights across the country. You find atrocities happening every day. Congress party has always been standing by the side of Dalits. It was the Congress party which has brought in this Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989. And in fact, the National Advisory Council has looked at how this legislation was working, and then came up with amendments to the act, which were later also brought out as an amendment to the act. So the Congress party has to do all these things to win the confidence of the Dalits.
Okay. Mr. Raju, before I bring in Mr. Amin again, tell me, what is that one thing that the government of the day can do to be able to build more livelihoods and more opportunities? Because some may want to be entrepreneurs, micro SME entrepreneurs, some may want to be homepreneurs. So what can the government do to be able to provide them those opportunities that you're seeking for them and bring them into the mainstream, so that the objective with which you've written the book is fulfilled? And not just look at them at vote banks, not look them as numbers, but look them as communities that can be part of the growth of the Indian GDP, of the Indian polity, so to say.
I think first and foremost, they should be endowed with assets, whether land asset or other assets from which they can secure incomes regularly. That's something that has to be secured to them. They can't be dependent on agricultural labor or dependent on the unorganized labor. So giving them assets, land or other assets, is something that has to be given. Secondly, quality education is something that would definitely change the fate of the next generation. That is something non-negotiable that has to be.
Yeah, so education is a big game changer. I think because the moment they're educated, it can be a window to the world. It can be a passport to opportunities, and more importantly, there is such a need for skilled people at all levels. They don't even need a separate quota to be absorbed. as long as they are able to be brought into the livelihood opportunity through right education, I think they will progress naturally. Back to you, Rohit.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Raju, you switched off your video. We'll need your video to be on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. So, Mr. Raju, there's another thing, which I wanted to ask you, which is about, looking at Dalits largely has been from a welfare politics. Welfare has been a key. Uh, is it the case? Do we need to move away from this, narrow approach? How can we broad base it and look beyond the welfare politics as far as Dalits are concerned?
Yeah, I think definitely time has come for us to really look beyond welfare politics. Welfare politics has only catered to the needs of the Dalits in a very small way, particularly to get their political allegiance. It's time to understand what is the potential of every Dalit family, what needs to be done, what kind of a policy framework has to be put in place, what kind of measures need to be taken. So moving away from the welfare, investing in their human resources, investing in their development agenda is something that is the need of the hour. I think in the past, it was welfare that was brought in to basically get their political allegiance. I think we need to really call it a day and look at Dalits as contributors to the national development. I think I've seen how, despite the discrimination they are suffering, despite the poverty they are enduring, Dalits are able to contribute so much to the nation, so much to the world. So that is what the governments have to recognize and invest in their human resource.
So let me ask you one more question. It pertains to the Congress regime, because during that time also I think what we're talking about issues, they persisted. Those issues where Dalits still face those issues. When you look back, do you think something could have been done in a different way?
Certainly, many things could have been done differently. I was mentioning earlier also, they could have been given access to land so that today you would not find many of them as agricultural laborers. There could have been greater trust on giving quality education to them, which is not the case today. There could have been greater access to their human resource development, which is not the case today. There could have been greater investment on developing their skills so that they are able to become employed in the private sector or in the government sector. And finally, many of the Dalits have potential to become entrepreneurs, but a lot of support is needed. So that needs to be put in place.
Okay. There's another talk of, apart from marginalization, there's also radicalization, of some of the Dalit youth are, we often kind of hear such news. It's been written around. What are the factors that are leading to this radicalization in your view in the current climate? And what are the ways to address it also?
I would say when it comes to Dalits, radicalization of Dalits has never been such a serious problem. There may have been sporadic incidents of some people in some corners of the country becoming radical, but by and large, I would say Dalit community as a whole, they were having hope on the constitution because for them it is Ambedkar's constitution. They see tremendous hope. They have not given up hope on their development or hope on brighter prospects in their future. Dalit community as a whole is having that kind of hope. Otherwise, if that is not there, today India would not have been like this. So I would say as a community, these are the people who have tremendous hope on better prospects for their future.
So popular culture is something that has always been a key indicator of where the Dalit politics stays. If you look at Dalit cinema, education, and now the fact that India is, home to the largest community of startups, where do the Dalit, where does the Dalit community figure in all of this? Has anything benefited them when we are talking about the many success stories that we witness?
Yes, I've seen across the country there are a lot of artists coming from Dalit communities. In fact, they were there in every field of art and also in the cinema. Though for decades, the Indian cinema has not brought out the Dalit narrative for various reasons, but of late we are able to see many cinemas bringing out Dalit narratives boldly. In fact, one of the contributors to my book, P.R. Ranjit, who has been a
Mhm.
successful producer, brought out many films. He's the one who has very eloquently spoken about Dalits and cinema, and he feels that society is slowly reconciling to the need for accepting the Dalit narrative into the cinema. And coming to the entrepreneurs, there are large number of entrepreneurs across various states among Dalit communities, given the opportunities, given little bit of investment, given little bit of contacts, they are able to really grow as entrepreneurs. In fact, one of the articles brought out very clearly little investment in that direction, how it is promoting entrepreneurship among Dalits.
Right. So from here on, first give me a sense of the current political regime and their approach to Dalit community. What are the good things that you see?
I think the good things I see is the constitutional promise of reservations have not been diluted, where judiciaries are trying to put hurdles in fulfilling some of those rights, particularly in the reservations and promotion. The government is arguing the cases in favor of Dalits, so there is no issue on that. But in terms of investing adequate resources on development of Dalits, I would say resources commensurate to the need are not really made available. Number one. Number two, in fact, more financial support for promoting education, particularly the scholarship, pre-metric scholarship, post-metric scholarships ought to happen. That has not happened. In fact, there has been delays in release of these post-metric scholarships. That's something that is unfortunate. Thirdly, some states have demonstrated, as one of the essays in the book has very clearly brought out, authored by R.S. Praveen, as how investment in quality education, residential schools is changing the future of Dalits. Those models have not been replicated across the country. So, and finally, the scheduled caste subplan, tribal subplan, a policy paradigm which was there for many decades, which provides for mandatory allocation of budgetary resources for development of scheduled caste, scheduled tribes. The needed trust is not there for implementing that policy across all the states.
I have two more questions, sir. One is, if you have to describe the mindset of the Dalit youth today, has he or she been able to overcome the stereotypes that were fed to him for decades? What is the mindset like?
I think the educated Dalit youth, their mindset, I think they have defeated the stereotype. I have seen large number of Dalit youth, their aspirations are different. They they feel they are second to none. They feel that nothing will come in the way of their progress. They are prepared to go to places across the world. So I'm very happy about that. Thanks to the social media, thanks to the digital world that they are exposed to, they have I would say, come out of that stereotype, which is a welcome.
Right. So, keeping the Dalit, this book in context and what you have written about the great, research that you have put into it. One, do you think there needs to be more of such work that comes out in the public domain than an occasional, kind of an literature that is around? Do you think there is need for more literature, more narratives that need to come out about the Dalit community? Because normally what we see and hear are politically charged ones, and they often kind of limit the entire image of the community in a certain way. Do you think there is need for it, and how can that be done?
Yes, I think while bringing out this book, I was conscious that I should not dwell into the past so much and reinforce victimhood of the Dalits. I wanted to come out of it and see bright future for Dalits, see the opportunities, see the possibilities for change. So I want to look into the future. That is what this book about. But at the same time, I was very conscious that any any examination of the issues concerning the Dalits, unless I'm able to really see what exactly is the battle that Dalits are battling, how the past lies are coming the way, they will not be able to move forward. That's why I brought out this narrative about the Dalit truth and caste lies and try to examine the interplay of these truth and the lies in every chapter. So I actually looked at this whole Dalit life, covering almost every aspect of Dalit life in this book, except perhaps spirituality. I hope to see more of such values, say Dalit truth, battles for dignity, Dalit truth, battles for prosperity, Dalit truth, for claiming their share in the nation's wealth. More of such values I expect to come. But what I hope to see, all these writings will clearly bring out the dire need for fighting against the caste system. That is something that I wanted to highlight because, unfortunately, all our discourse on the development, we ignore this. But Baba Sahib Ambedkar has once said, your social, your political, economic rights, if they are deprived, one can achieve constitutional or legal means. But the social rights they have deprived, they can be achieved only by fighting against the caste system. So the main theme of this book and the books that are, I hope, come in the future, all other aspects, to keep this at the center to the whole discourse.
Okay, before I come to my last question, this is my favorite one. That what was the story about, about writing this book? Was it easy to put together all this body of work? Did it involve sleepless nights? What was it like? Give our viewers a little bit of backstory to this.
Yes, I think the first challenge is to identify and shortlist the issues. There are n number of issues on which one can really look into. That itself is a very big Herculean task to shortlist the issues and identify the right author who can contribute. And having got the essays, the most difficult part is these essays are tell us. The real job is to put them together and narrative to bind them and prepare it. That's what I try to do to best of my knowledge. The narrative that I try to bring in is prospects for a bright future for Dalits, a way forward for Dalits. That has been the narrative that I to bring out in this book.
Great. And finally, sir, as we move on from here, how will the Dalit narrative pan out? In a very expansive way. I mean to say, with politics, social, the social aspect of it, the political aspect of it, the economic aspect of it. How will this narrative pan out from here on, say in the next 2 to 3 years?
I think the Dalit narrative is bound to really pan out politically in the first instance, because there is a greater awareness among the Dalits about their power to choose a particular political party, and they are now examining various options. That is one. The secondly, on the development front, now the country has come to recognize their potential possibilities for really enabling them to harness their potential. So a lot of expansion in the development agenda is definitely going to take place.
All right. Great. Thank you, Mr. Raju, for sharing these.
One correction that I need to point out while introducing Dr. Anurag has introduced me as a former civil servant and also minister. I was never a minister, so I thought I should.
Right. Absolutely. But thank you, Sri Raju, for sharing your thoughts on this book, The Dalit Truth, The Battles for Realizing Ambedkar's Vision. And this book is published by Penguin, and you can get your copy from the nearest bookshop and online as well. Great talking to you, sir, and thanks for sharing your insights. It's been a really engaging conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.